Alright, so what's up guys? So we are out here on another run, out here doing this craziness for all you guys who simply sit back, watch, admire, and enjoy, right? Do your thing with us, right? As we are making our way through this comfortable abyss of shade, right? As we're running. It was so hot today, man. We had to postpone our run a little bit, but that doesn't mean that we were sitting around doing nothing. We were still being productive, running errands, cleaning our room, preparing foods, right? Not sitting and doing nothing. And in particular, as you give us a second to look at something on our phone, as we have something to look at. And yeah, so now without further ado, we're gonna go into today's video topic, which is when you feel behind in life, right? So many people, that's a common instance, right? Even if you have quote unquote success, right? People aspire to be you, and you know, you for one can feel behind, right? There's no universal definition of that, right? A lot of it comes down to your perception. So it kind of has to do with tip number one, as far as the 4 tips for when you feel behind in life. And tip number one is a principle that I live by, and it is the less you want, the more you have. And that's not to say that you should go around and become a lazy bum and do nothing, right? Although for some people that can mean happiness, right? No one's telling you that you have to go and win $1 million, 10 million, 100 million, a billion, right? No one is forcing you to do that. But you know, if you want to do that, or you have such lofty ambitions, right? You may want to tone them down a little bit, but doesn't mean that you stop working towards them. You only want to make sure that you want them less, right? Because if they happen, they happen. But if they don't, you won't feel so bad about it, right? Because far too many people start to work towards their dreams, right? Whether the dream eventually may become being the richest man in the world, but on their way to getting there, of course, they're gonna get those raises, right? They're gonna eventually get the Lamborghini or the Ferrari they've always wanted, and the beautiful house and all this stuff. But when they get all this beautiful items, you know, that signify that success, I can bet you they're not gonna be happy with it, because they're always gonna be wanting more and more and more. As for many people, you know, what they want is perfection, and that is simply impossible, right? They are never going to get there. I don't care who you are. If you're playing basketball, not even Michael Jordan himself is perfect, right? Or LeBron James, whoever you consider to be the best at what they're doing, even in their sport, right? God forbid if you put Michael Jordan on a tennis court, right? Or something outside of his expertise. And although he might do significantly well due to his competitive nature, but you get it's just that we are not perfect people. So by simply being okay with falling short, you know, of your expectations, you are gonna be fine, right? Because you want less, right? More will appear to you, right? Because we look at things objectively at times, right? We can look at a house and see its value at, let's say, 500,000 and only see it that way. But if you go from person to person, one person is gonna look at that $500,000 house. If you put them in there, they're gonna look at it like, you know, they won the lottery, like it's the greatest thing ever. While other people are gonna be embarrassed ashamed to have that house, right? Because they think that it's cheap, right? The flaws of that house are gonna become magnified. And you know, this is another thing. That's tip number 2 perhaps, right? Is to be okay with your flaws, right? Because when you are behind in life, your flaws can seem like everything, right? Like you suck, right? Or, you know, you're not tall enough, therefore you'll never make it into the NBA, right? Or you're not big enough, you weren't born with great, amazing bodybuilding genetics, right? To become the next Ronnie Coleman. But, you know, recognizing your flaws and being okay with them is only going to help you break out of that rut of feeling behind, right? Recognizing that it happens to everyone and being okay with it, because it's only a part of being human, right? So learning to work with those flaws and make them better is only going to help you catch up, right, in your mind, right? Because that's what it boils down to. It's all a construct in your head, right? No one is telling you that you are behind but you, right? Others may say it, but are you really truly behind, right? It's all open to perception, right? And that's tip number 3 for when you feel lost in life. And this is to recognize the idea of that perception, right? How you see those things matters, right? How you see being behind, right? Because for many people, simply getting by, right? In school, these were the kids that the teachers would seemingly go to on purpose as examples, right? Those kids that simply skate by, that simply average an F throughout the course, but somehow, some way through the end, they manage to get a D, right? To get, you know, the good grade to pass the class. And, you know, while the teachers, they look at them as being behind, in the eyes of the kids, they weren't really behind. They were content, right? And the definition of success between the teacher and the student, they vary quite greatly, because there are always extraneous variables that you can and can't control, right? What if the kid was working 2 extra jobs outside of school, right, to support himself or herself and their family, right? There's so many things that you can't control, right? Learning deficiencies, habits, whatever. Habits you kind of can't control, but you understand that, right? So, you know, while so many people might think they're behind, simply taking charge of those aspects of life that you can't control are only going to set you on the way to getting on the right track, right? To being, you know, on par, on pace to your success, right? Like a marathon runner, right? Because if you put the #1 marathon runner in the world and put them with the average runners, right? Those award-winning marathon runners are running at barely 2 hours, and you have them finish a race at 3 hours. For many people, that's an amazing accomplishment, but for the runner, it's like they messed up. And there's nothing inherently wrong with getting those 3 hours. It was just within the standards of the person doing the race. So really think about that. And the 4th tip for when you feel, you know, behind is simply put your head down and do the work, right? This goes beyond simply perceiving, but if you sincerely know that you're behind, right? You have a bunch of work to do, there's a deadline, and no, you can't miss it, so you're behind. Instead of worrying about the deadline, thinking about what would happen if you don't get it, by simply putting your head down and working on the paper, project, whatever it is that you have to do, you are only going to get there. But you're gonna put yourself in a better position to do everything ahead of that deadline. So, you know, for you, really think about that and consider that for when you're feeling behind, right? Because we waste so much time and thought thinking over things that when we put the action to work, we will get there. So these are the 4 tips in regards to when you feel lost in life, and we say thank you very much and goodbye.